All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, should be able to post them below the video if you're on a smaller screen like a computer, or sorry, like a phone. If you're on a larger screen like a computer, should be to the right of the video. So it looks like we got a couple questions in here. So Kev says, "Hi Q, can you discuss hands, please?" Says, as I understand it, on the downswing, you bring the right elbow in, which then in turn makes that right palm face upwards, like lifting a dumbbell. Can you do a slow-mo, please, from the onwards through and past impact? Thanks. If you want to see slow motions of the swing, here I'll put so I'm going to put a video in the chat that shows Clay's swing from multiple angles, multiple clubs. If that's what if you're wanting to see slow motions of the swing, but I recommend you go watch. But yeah, I mean, when the right elbow usually needs to go in, because if it goes out like this too much, you can see how the club wants to. Doesn't mean that it will. Like, I can put my elbow out and still get the club to work behind. It's just a little bit more difficult. But yeah, usually if we're here, right, the elbow is more in, but then you can see I don't want my palm to be, I don't want it to be like this though, where my face is open, right? I want to make sure that I'm in my posture, right? My elbow goes in, and then I want to have my palm of my hand more facing toward the ball, which would be more like that, right? So if I'm coming in to that first parallel position, that's where I want to be. I want to have my elbow kind of more in front of my shirt seam here, and I want to have that club face more angled down toward the ground slightly, right? And then from there, that'll allow you to have a better move into the ball. Yeah, if you want to just study slow motions of the swing, if that's what you're into, well, one, if you want to look at Clay's swing, that video that I just posted, that link that I just posted in the chat, you can go watch that. If you want to look at tour players' swings, you can go on YouTube and search about any of your favorite tour player, and they will very highly likely there will be some swings out there you can look at. David Yeager says, is twisting the grip with left hand considered hand manipulation? Yeah, I mean, if you do anything with your hand with the club, it's going to be manipulation of the club by definition. If not, what is the definition of dreaded hand manipulation? You're manipulating the club. You're not going to get away from manipulating the club. Manipulating the club is just you're putting in action. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we can just Google what the definition is. An action of manipulating something in a skillful manner. The action of manipulating well, that doesn't really tell us what the definition is. Let's see here. Let's go to the old Merriam-Webster dictionary here. To treat or operate with, or as if the hands are, or by mechanical means, especially in a skillful manner. So yeah, so basically, if you're manipulating with the hands, it just means that you're moving your hands in a skillful manner. Sorry, my words are getting jumbled up here. You're moving your hands skillfully. That's exactly what you want to do. So I wouldn't necessarily look at manipulation as a negative thing. It's what you want to do, right? You want to move your hands in a skillful manner, which is what that means. You're not going to get away from that. You can't move the club properly without manipulating it. You have to manipulate it. And ideally you would, right? Because you want to move the club with your hands in a skillful manner. All right. We got plenty of time left here. We got about 50 minutes. If we have more questions, feel free to ask. If not, no worries. I'll just be answering some emails and stuff while y'all are coming up with questions.
So Charles H says, I have trouble completing my swing on the course. Is there a drill you could suggest that will make it easier to complete my swing consistently? Well, what I would recommend doing, if there's ever something like you struggle with in your swing and that you're working on, what I would recommend doing to implement it on the course is to do a rehearsal to basically emphasize what you're doing. Whenever and you'll see this when you watch TV and you watch like a tour player, right? I was watching a lot of the Open Championship, and you'll see some of them who are kind of working. So Justin Rose, for example, right? Justin Rose was really you would see him. He would kind of do some swings where he would really kind of go like this. So he's really working. You could tell that he's working on kind of lowering his arms, right? Letting his arms kind of lower down instead of kind of spinning open, right? Because if we just get up to the top and we leave our arms up and we rotate, well, look what's going to happen. We're going to come way over the top. So we really need to feel like we let those arms kind of lower as we rotate. So it looked to me like that was something that Justin Rose must be struggling with a little bit, and you would see him kind of do these exaggerated kind of rehearsals. Alex Noren, he's famous for always kind of doing a rehearsal. If you remember when Sergio won the Masters that year, he was doing like I can't remember. I think he was doing like a one arm swing where he'd like hold his arm, and I'm not sure exactly what he was working on there. Maybe his elbow was kind of flaring out, and he's trying to keep his elbow from flaring out so much. Things like that. So if there's ever something that you're struggling with, just do a rehearsal. Just make sure I would take a practice swing
We go up to the top, I pause, get that big turn, you know, and kind of go through it, and then just try to replicate that same thing in your swing on the course. If you want to make a bigger turn more second nature to where you don't have to do that, we have a course that is specifically for that, and that's the power turn course. So if you want to work on making that second nature so that way you don't have to think about it, you always make a good turn back in through the ball, the power turn course is going to be where you want to go. So to get to that course, click the instruction tab at the top, and then click the top speed golf system. And then from there, you can click the power turn. Just get started on those drills, level 1, level 2, level 3. But to help you to implement it more on the course, I would just do a rehearsal swing, just a quick rehearsal swing to get you in the right mindset. Like, okay, I got to make sure I'm still getting a big turn on these. All right, keep the questions coming here. All right, so Donnie D says, very fortunate to have high-tech video and gears. I can get perfect numbers from P1 to 4 and from P5 to 8, but I can't combine them. Not sure. So you can make a perfect backswing, but not a perfect downswing, or vice versa. Yeah. So I mean, you got to basically what I would do is I'd work on getting the backswing. Actually, the downswing is more important. So I'd actually work on getting the down. I would focus on the P5 to P8. That's what matters the most. That's what you're hitting the ball with. So I could care less what you're. So here's the thing. There is no perfect P1 to P4. It does not exist. If you look on tour, you look at the best players in the world, you are going to see very different things from P1 to P4. So I'm not sure what you're basing perfection from P1 to P4 on, right? Not sure what you're basing that on. Because really, for the backswing, here are the things that are most important, and these are the things that are talked about in the top speed golf system. One, we want to have a stable and fluid spine, right? So what we want to do is we want to have our spine angled away at address, and then we want to remain angled away as we get up to the top, and we don't want to have too much translation of our spine too much that way and too much that way. So what that means is basically if you were to draw two lines on the outside of my torso, I would want to kind of remain between those two lines, right? So if you, that's what doesn't make sense to me. How can your P5 to P8 be good, be perfect if your P1 to P4 isn't perfect? It's all, it precedes the other, so it doesn't really make sense. So that's why I don't understand what you're basing it on, what a perfect is. So so basically what I would do is I just focus on getting a good rotation and having a good P5 P8. And also I don't know what you're basing this on. I think that you might be overcomplicating it a little bit. Because it doesn't really make sense. You can't have a good a perfect downswing without having a good backswing, right? So your P5 to P8, it can't be perfect if you're making a bad backswing. You know what I mean? So so basically what I'm saying is that focus on the things that really matter the most in the swing and not trying to perfect every little part of it, because you just can't really work through the swing that way. Now I'm not super experienced with gears. I've never really worked with it. I know what it is. I've seen what it does and stuff like that. You may want to talk to a gears instructor about it. By perfect, I mean hip and shoulder turn numbers with full shoulder turn, top of the swing. I cannot make good rotation coming down. Well, you may not be physically capable of doing so. It's much, much, much more important to get a good full shoulder turn than to have your hips open at impact. I think a lot of people really overemphasize trying to get the hips open, and doing so, they hit the ball poorly, right? Because they may not be physically capable from a flexibility standpoint to get the hips as open as a tour player does, right? Tour players are very flexible. Generally, they're very flexible. So they're going to be able to do things physically that a lot of us aren't going to be able to do. I personally do not have a ton of hip rotation at impact. My hips at impact are maybe 20 degrees open. This is basically what my impact position looks like. It's about like that. That would be on the very low end for a tour player, right? The very, very low end. I'd be like at the bottom end of a tour player. I'm not as flexible as a tour player. The overwhelming majority of tour players. So I would be much more concerned about getting a good shoulder turn, because these are the things that matter the most in the golf swing, right? Because you can look at tour players and you'll see the golf swings look very different. Scottie Scheffler's swing looks way different than Schauffele's swing. And Schauffele's swing looks way different than Adam Scott's swing and Justin Rose's swing. And all these swings, they look very different, but they have commonalities. And the commonalities are they all have a stable fluid spine. They all keep that spine angle relatively the same. Now, I've heard where gears tells you all these things, and the spine angle, it's all baloney, blah blah blah. It really isn't. And it's more about technically It's not necessarily a spine, it's more of the torso, but we just say the spine. So the spine is curved and it moves, right? It twists, it curves. So your spine isn't dead straight, right? It twists and it moves. So when we're talking about having a stable fluid spine, generally when I look at that, what I'm doing is I'll take two lines and I'll draw those two lines on the side of your torso. And what we want to see is in the backswing is we want to see you stay relatively between those two lines, and we want to see your torso to kind of match that angle at the top. And if it's a little bit off, that's okay. There is margin for error there. If you're a little bit toward one line versus the other line, that's okay. Again, there's margin for error though. But if we get way outside the lines where we're going like this to the top, where we have a big hip sway, or we're kind of front loading, where we're going like this, where we get to, or our spine gets angled too much that way or too much that way, it just makes it to where it's difficult to get the club to work down the right way. So that's really the most important thing for consistency is if you look at tour players, you're not going to see any tour players really slide their hips one way or the other. You're not going to see any tour players lean their spine way this way or way that way. That's what the stable fluid spine was all about. So that's why that is important, right? Getting a good turn, that is important. Why is so? Let's talk about why these things are important. Let's go back to the stable fluid spine since we don't have a ton of questions in there. But if I make an abbreviated backswing, I can get 30 degrees open at impact. The 90-degree shoulders at P4, I can only get the hips open about 15 degrees. It's like I can't walk and chew gum. I have success. I have success way or the other. Well, I would say it's much more important for you to get a full turn, and we'll get to that in a second, than it is to get the hips 15 degrees more open. Much more important. Now, maybe you hit the ball just as far with what you feel like is a shorter turn or whatever. So just do whatever works the best. That's really the most important thing. But generally speaking, it's much better to get a full turn because it helps you to get club head speed. So why is it important? Why is the stable fluid spine important? Why do we see every single tour player have the spine angle the way I dress? They remain in that spine angle. And then as they come into contact, also they don't slide the hips way or the other. And when they come into contact, the hips move forward and the spine gets more angled away. Why does every single tour player do that? Every single one. I'm not cherry picking. I'm saying every single one. Every single video that I've ever looked at of a tour player, they do that. Within reason, right? There's some tour players that are a little bit more angled away than others, but generally speaking, they're all within a range. So the reason why it's important is if our spine moves too much this way, right? So we have a big hip slide, you're going to tend to hit the ground behind the ball because it's important to have the body more forward, especially for shots that are hitting off the ground, because we need to get the bottom of the swing in front of the ball, right? So that's part of the reason why that's important. Another reason is that if we move way off that way, right, it's going to be hard to create power in the swing because we're not going to be able to push into the ground to turn our body through. Also, if our body's moving off this way, our head's going to typically move way off because it's connected to our spine. If our eyes are moving around everywhere, it makes it more difficult to coordinate a good strike with the ball. You're going to tend to hit it chunky, off the toe, thin, heel, that sort of thing. So that's why that's important. Why is it important for the spine to not get too far angled away or angled toward? Because the more angled away you are, the more you're going to tend to swing from the inside. And also the more you're going to tend to hit the ground behind the ball. The more leaning toward you are, the more you're going to tend to come over the top, right, and chop down on the ball. So generally, we want to be around that 6 to 8 degrees angled away. We want to remain in that 6 to 8 degrees angled away. And that allows you to be in a position to be able to more easily get that club to work from the inside, and be able to hit straight golf shots. So it comes down to hitting the ground in the right spot, because we've got to understand, what does it take to hit a good golf shot? It doesn't take necessarily hip rotation, right? It doesn't necessarily, what does it physically take to hit a good golf shot? There's just 4 things. That's it. 4 things. I'll say there's 5 things. So there's 5 things. So, but there's four main things. The first main thing is ball first contact. If you are hitting the ground before the ball If you're trying to compress the ball, right? Now, obviously, there's situations where you want to hit the ground before the ball, like hitting out of a bunker, or something like that. But generally speaking, we don't want to be hitting the ground before the ball. We want to be hitting the ball, right? So that we want to be making ball first contact. 2 is center face contact, hitting the ball in the center face. Again, there might be situations where you want to hit it a little off the toe, a little off the heel, a little low on the face, or whatever. But generally speaking, if I'm trying to transfer as much energy to the ball as possible, I want to be hitting it solidly in the middle of the face, right? I need to have my club face angle in the direction that I want the ball to start, right? And then I need to have my club. That's the third thing. And then I need to have my club path, which is the fourth thing, to coordinate with my face angle to get the ball flight that I want, right? So what does that mean? If I want to hit a draw, I need to have my club face open to that target, so that way my ball can start to the right. And then I need to have my club path into out to be able to get the ball to curve back to the left. So if I'm going to put numbers on it, if my club path was 4 degrees into out, then I would want to have my face angle 2 degrees open, and that is going to allow the face to be 2 degrees close to the path, 2 degrees open to the target. That's going to create a baby draw that starts 2 degrees right of the target and curves back toward it, assuming you're hitting the ball in the middle of the face, right? That's what it is. And then the fifth thing is to just have speed behind it, right? There's some speed there. So basically everything that you do in the golf swing, everything, that's the mindset that I would have. Anything that you change in your golf swing, anything that you're trying to do in your golf swing, it has to be to improve those things. It has to be to put you in a position to be able to do those things better, right? So the stable fluid spine, it helps you to hit the ground in the right spot, because if your spine's way over here, it's too far angled away, you're going to tend to hit behind it. If your spine's way over here, it's leaning toward, you're going to tend to chop down on it, right? Or hit too far in front of the ball, right? So that's a big part of it. If your spine is not stable, right, and fluid, then your eyes are going to be tend to moving around everywhere. When the eyes are moving around everywhere, it definitely makes it more difficult to coordinate a center face strike, right? So you're not going to hit it solidly. And you're also going to tend to have a hard time hitting the ground in the right spot. With your spine angles are leaning toward and leading away, right? That changes your club path. Leaning toward, you're going to tend to want to swing more over the top. Too far angled away, you're going to tend to want to swing too much from the inside, right? And then the face angle, right? You may be making compensations in your swing to get the club to shallow out, right? So if my spine is angled this way at the top, and then I got to back up out of it to try to get shallow out, and I got to stand up and flip my hands, that makes it harder to control the face, right? So the stable fluid spine, the reason why it's called the number one key to consistency is mainly because it's kind of the foundation of the golf swing, that it's tied to so many pieces of impact, right? If our spine angles are not good, then we're going to tend to struggle with all of those things that I just mentioned, right? So that's number one, right? The power turn, that's the second piece, right? The power turn, the biggest influence there is speed, right? The more I can turn, generally, the more I can turn, the more I can wind up. The more space and time I have to accelerate the club, the more speed I can generate at impact. Hitting the ball long is a huge proponent to playing better golf. It's one of the biggest proponents. If you look at the tour players, right? If you look at the top in the world, there's no short hitters. I shouldn't say no. There's very few short hitters. And even those guys are way longer than most people. They're just not as long as the longest guys, right? There's usually, it's pretty rare. There's usually not any golfers that are below that, and the golfers that are below that are usually elite in another area. So they're like elite putters or elite iron players, right? So Colin Morikawa, for example, Colin Morikawa is not a real long hitter, but he is an elite ball striker with the irons. He really makes it up for it with how well he hits his irons. And also, he's not a real long hitter, but he's pretty good at he doesn't hit it super long. He still hits it plenty long, right? He's still above average. But compared to like the Scotty Scheffler and the guys that are Rory McIlroy, the guys that are kind of the top tops, that he's in line with, the people that he's closest to in the rankings, the world rankings and stuff like that, he's a shorter hitter, right? But he still hits the ball plenty far enough. But he makes up for it with stellar iron play, typically, and pretty good short game as well. He's pretty good around the green, especially in the bunkers. He's really awesome out of the bunkers. So yeah, that's that's generally what you're going to see. So the power turn really helps with that. Power turn also can help with being able to control things better, because generally if you have a really short swing, when I see people not turn, they'll try to create speed by getting really quick with it. And when you're really quick with it, it makes it harder to coordinate a good strike. It makes it more difficult to hit the ball in the middle of the face, hit the ground in the right spot, and all those sorts of things. So power turn, big part of speed. Lag, right? Lag, again, is another piece. It helps you to get some speed. It also helps you to control the face better, because if you're throwing out the club early, you're going to tend to hit the ground earlier. You're going to tend to back up out of it. You're going to tend to have trouble controlling the face, because you're going to tend to flip through impact, right? So lag is another piece. Compression line, that's the next piece. That's the line that goes from our lead ankle, lead hip, lead shoulder, right? If we want to have that in a straight line at impact, and we want to have that for an iron, I like to see it pretty vertical. For a driver, I like to see it angled away some. That the reason is that, if we're more angled away, it promotes a more upward angle attack, allows you to get the high launch, lower spin, which helps you to hit it farther, right? Gives you better launch characteristics. But for an iron, I like to see it more vertical, because it helps to get the bottom of the swing more in front of the ball, which a lot of people struggle with. If we're hanging back as we come into contact, we're going to tend to hit the ground behind the ball. So we want to get that body forward, so that way we can make some good ball first contact. And we also want that to be in a straight line. If we're really bumping the hips back and keeping the lower body back, we're going to tend to hit the ground behind the ball. We're going to tend to stall our hips too much, because getting the hips open, the amount that it's open isn't as important as keeping the hips moving, right? If in my swing, I keep the hips moving. The hips don't stall. They just keep moving. Now, they don't open up a ton, but they keep moving. It's when they stall and we tuck the hips under and they stall and we stand up, that's when it's going to lead to some issues. All right. Because you're going to tend to have trouble with ground contact. You're going to tend to hit the ball thin. You're going to tend to early release and not compress the ball and things like that. And then the release, right? Getting that club to release, out in front, that can help you to hit it farther, transfer more energy to the ball, because you're getting more shaft lean, right? It also helps you to control the ball better, because the ball's not going to necessarily go as far, especially if you have a lot of club head speed. If you have a lot of club head speed with an early release, you're just going to hit really, really high balls that are hard to control. If you don't have a ton of club head speed, then letting the club release a little, we still want some shaft lean, but letting the club release. If you're someone who doesn't have a lot of club head speed, and you have an impact position like this, and you're hitting it really, really low, and it's hard to hit greens because you're having to run it up there, it may be better for you to let that club release a little bit. Still want shaft lean, so basically you maybe be going from here to there, right? Still have shaft lean, but if we're letting the club release a little bit more, that can help you get a little bit more loft, help you have a little bit more playable ball flight to hold greens, right? So that's really what I would focus on. If you want to go the gears route, that's not what we do here. I would maybe work with a gears coach that is specialized in that thing. That would probably be a better thing. But what we do here is the top speed golf system. And that's really what we believe is the most important things. And honestly, it's really not arguable, because you just look at tour players and you'll pick anyone, draw them out of a hat, and look at their swing. They will be doing all of the things that I just talked about within a certain range. Every single one of them will be. So, so those are the most important things in the golf swing. Now, the golf swings maybe look very different, but they'll be doing those things in the golf swing. Every single one of them will be. So if you're wanting to work on technical things in the swing, those would be the things that I'd be doing first, and then everything else is just kind of tinkering. If you work through those, you'll be better off for it. All right. So Kev M says, "Hi Q. You've probably answered this a lot, but how can I get rid of the chicken wing? I can whack the ball, okay, but would like to see a more elegant finish. I've had this problem amongst others for years, and despite loads of lessons, no pros have been able to cure me of this." Um, so so basically, what causes a chicken wing typically is going to be where the arms outrace the body. It's kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where the body stalls and then the arms keep going to bring the club to the ball, right? So if you imagine if I'm here and then I start down and I just stop my hips just stop and stall suddenly. Well, if my arms keep going, right, I'm going to end up with the chicken wing, right? So that's typically where the chicken wing comes from, is from the body stalling. Now, a chicken wing is not necessarily a bad thing because there's tour players that have chicken wings. So it's more about how you're releasing the club. Now, if you're stalling your body and coming into contact like this, that's the bad chicken wing. That's the chicken wing that's going to lead to usually poor ground contact. It's usually going to lead to it can lead to poor control of the face. It can lead to a lot of things. But if you have the chicken wing where you're coming in and you're like this at impact and you're releasing it out in front and your body's continuing to turn through, it doesn't. That's a completely fine chicken wing. Look at Jordan Spieth's swing. Look at Angel Cabrera's swing. Look at Brooks Koepka's swing. Look at Lee Westwood's swing. These are all players that have chicken wings, right? They're all, many of them, 3 out of the 4 that I just named are major championship winners. Lee Westwood is the only one that isn't, but he's nearly won a bunch of them. He's sometimes considered one of the best players to never win one, right? So, so if it's like that, I would not worry about it at all. But if it's a situation where your body is stalling, right, and you're getting that chicken wing from that, then that would be something I would work on. So what you would need to look at is what is the root cause for it, right? What is the root cause? So is it you're physically not capable of keeping your hips moving? Is it that you are stalling your body to help the club work down to the ball in a way that helps you to hit the ball better, right? So let me talk about what that might be. If you're someone who's coming down steep like this, well, if I'm starting down steep and I really rotate my body and keep everything moving, well, I'm just going to continue to come down steep and over the top. So a way to kind of reroute that club and get that club to work down to the ball more shallow would be if you start down steep, you stall your body and kind of stand up. Well, now if I do that, now I can get that club to shallow, but I've had to stall my body and I'm going to have to, maybe chicken wing because of that, right? Another reason could be because the face is open, right? So if I'm coming down and my club face is open as I'm coming down, one way to get that club face back to square is to stall the body. So that way you can release the club. And if you stall the body, like I said, if I stall the body, I'm going to typically get that chicken wing. But if I release that club, that gets that face back to square, right? So if my face is open and I stall and release it, I can square it up. If my face is open and I keep rotating through and I have my hands in front, it's just going to stay open. Intuitively, you're not going to let yourself hit it a mile to the right. You're going to try to come up with some sort of solution to get the ball to go in the direction of the target, which would be to stall the body and flip the hands. And when you stall the body, sometimes you're going to get you're going to get that. My contact is excellent. I think it's the end of the swing, which creates the chicken bit. All good. Thanks very much. Well, I guess I would just need to see your swing. To be honest with you, I could if I'm hitting the ball great, I could care less what it looks like. If I'm hitting the ball great, I could care less. So basically, if you're hitting the ball great, who cares? It does not matter. So if that's really what's going on, you're hitting the ball great, there's nothing about your contact that's a problem, then don't worry about your chicken wing. And that might be why. So first of all, a pro can only tell you what's going on, right? you know, I've had lots. Not saying this is what you're doing, but this has just been my experience when somebody's told me, has used the line because I've heard it before, where they've had this problem and no pro has been able to fix it. Right. Well, sometimes yes, I think that can happen. You might have an instructor that doesn't understand, what's going on or whatever. Um, I would honestly say that that's fairly rare. Um, you know, for something like that. Um, I honestly don't even know of anybody that would do that. But a lot of times there's a root cause of the problem, and when a chicken wing is happening at the fastest point in the swing, right? And when things are happening at the fastest point in the swing, when you can't really think through, you can't organize your movements, right? Because what you might think would be, well, just keep your left arm straight, right? Just keep your left arm straight all the way through, right? Just do that. Just have that swing thought, right? Well, the reason why you can't do that is because things are moving so fast and your brain is doing what it knows how to do to be able to hit the ball, right? To get the ball to do what you're saying is your contact is excellent, right? So in that situation, you have to train it. It's something you have to train. And a lot of people don't want to train their swing. They don't want to train something because it's hard. It's difficult. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to change your swing at, around impact, because that's when the things are happening the most. So look at it this way. It's like, I assume you know how to type. So if you know how to type, imagine I took the keyboard and I rearranged all the keys on the keyboard, and it was just completely random. Not a single key was in the same spot as it was before. Completely different place. All right. Now you have to learn how to type again. Well, if you just try to go type and type fast, you're going to type all the wrong letters because you're going to do what your brain knows how to do, which is to type on an old keyboard. But if you type that way, it's going to be all the wrong letters. Every single letter is going to be wrong. It's just going to be pure nonsense, right? So what would you have to do to be able to type correctly? Well, you would have to really slow down and look at the keyboard, especially in the beginning. You'd really have to use your brain power to make sure that, okay, where is it? Then you select it, right? It would really suck in the beginning. It would. I'm not going to lie to you. It would. And then from there, right? Once you start typing a ton, right? You put some time in on it, you're actually going to start to gain an awareness for where these keys are, just like you did when you first started typing. Because when you first started typing, the letters on the keyboard, right? There's no rhyme or reason, for why they are where they're at. Now there is actually, because it's the most common letters are there, and so on and so forth. But when you look at it, if you just look at it, it seems like it's kind of random, right? But over time, you gain an awareness for where they are, and then eventually you get to where you don't even have to look at the keyboard. You don't even have to think about what each finger is doing. You just think of what you're trying to type, and then your fingers just do it, and you just look at it and it appears. It's almost like magic, right? Well, that's what your golf swing, that's what your chicken wing is right now. Your chicken wing is an autonomous thing that you're doing without any conscious thought. So in order to change that, you're going to have to kind of slow down, break it down, and gain an awareness for where it is and get better at doing it slower. And then you have to regress to where you can do it, and then you build it up from there, right? And the reality is that most people just don't want to do that. It's like the people that want six-pack abs, but they're not willing to cut out beer or dessert or eat less calories or work out. They're not willing to do those things, right? Well, you can't really do that. Unfortunately, if you want six-pack, you're going to have to make big-time sacrifices, right? I would have to make big-time sacrifices if I wanted that. And that's not something that I'm willing to do. So if you're not willing, if you're trying to change your golf swing and you're trying to change something that's happening at the moment of impact, you're going to have to make sacrifices to make that happen. There's going to be a drawback to it. I think a lot of people have this idea that, oh, I'm just going to go get a lesson from instructor, one lesson, and then they're just going to fix my chicken wing, and then I'm just going to be done with the chicken wing after this lesson. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Kev, I'm not saying that that's what you're doing. I'm just saying that that's, in my experience, it seems like that's what people expect. And when I was younger, that's what I expected too. I expected it to be like that. When I first got into wanting to become an instructor, I thought that that's what I was going to be able to do with people. And then I quickly learned that it just doesn't work that way. You can't do that. And the typing analogy is the best analogy that I've come up with, because I think most people know how to type, and they can, and it's more understandable. Like, well, yeah, if I try to go fast and it's all scrambled, I'm just going to type the wrong letters. But you can certainly learn how to type on a completely different keyboard with the letters in a completely different spot if you break it down and go slow and you put in the reps over time. You regress to where you can do it. You make sure that you are doing it correctly, and you have feedback mechanisms that tell you that you're doing it correctly. So like, if I type the letter, it shows up on the screen. I know that I typed the letter correctly. That's my feedback mechanism, right? If I'm typing and then the wrong letter shows up on the screen, I know that it's wrong, right? So I need to break it down, go slower, get better and better and better. Eventually, you're going to start to learn how to do it, and you're going to be able to do it faster and faster and faster. It's the same thing in the golf swing. So you just have to have patience. You have to regress to where you can do it and progress it from there. So if you're serious about getting rid of the chicken wing, what I would do is I would start with shorter, slower swings where you are able to hit the ball without a chicken wing. So for instance, I might start with a swing that's kind of like this, right? Where you're coming through and that lead arm stays straight all the way through. I would get to where I would do that, can do that. I would look at it on video, make sure that I'm doing it. I would try to get to where I can get like 10 in a row where I can do that. Then what I'll do is I'll go a little bit longer. I'll go to like 3/4 swing and see if I can come through and do that. If I can't do it at a full speed 3/4 swing, I'll go a little bit slower, right? I'll still go 3/4, but I'll go slower, right? And I'll make sure that I'm doing it. I'll look on video every single time to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. If I'm not, then I need to regress a little bit. I need to get better at doing it slower or with a shorter swing, and then I'll build it up. That's really what it takes to change it. It's not going to be one lesson with your local pro or whatever. It's not going to work that way. So if you want to change it, that's really what you do. That's why I like the online lessons, the monthly online lessons. They're unlimited because we can actually teach in that way. That's going to help you. If you come to me and it's just 1 hour, there's only so much you can do in an hour. I can only tell you what to do, and then you have to kind of go do it on your own. Whereas if you do the online lessons where you're getting constant feedback, right, then I think you can make more progress with it. All right, so Charles says, I often take a step back with my left foot on the fall through, resulting in a good hit that is pulled left 90 or 30 degrees, excuse me. I don't do this on my practice swings. Am I too far away from the ball? I shallow the club and keep both forearms close to my chest throughout the swing. I got bad news for you. You're not shallowing out the club, unfortunately. If you're pulling the ball left, that means that you're coming down steep. So you may feel like you're shallowing out the club, but the reality is that you're not. What creates a pull, right? A pull is caused by a steep downswing where the club is working out to in, and then the club face is in the direction of that path, right? So, for instance, if let's say it's 30, I doubt it's actually 30 degrees. That would be a lot. Again, these are probably feels. Because if you literally, so think about it this way, if you had a 150-yard shot that you pulled 30 degrees to the left, you'd probably miss that shot. That'd be like a 60-yard pull, basically. I don't know what the math is on that, but that would be a really big pull from 150 yards. So it's probably not quite 30, 30 degrees. But let's say that it actually is, right? Well, that means that your club path is 30 degrees out to in, and then your club face is 30 degrees close at impact. That's going to create a shot that pulls 30 degrees to the left. So you may not feel like you're shallow out the club, or you may not feel like you're coming down steep. You may feel like you're shallow out the club, but the reality is that you are not. So I would work on the 20-minute shallowing fix, getting the ball to start to the right and curve to the left. To get to the 20-minute shallowing fix, click the instruction tab at the top of the screen, and then you can click the 20-minute shallowing fix from there. Kev M says, thanks, Q. A bit of learning curve and POS with no additional benefit. I will look at online lessons later this evening. Yeah, so I do have one spot available if you're interested. But yeah, it's everybody's going to be a little bit different, but I will tell you, if you're the sexiest things to change in the golf swing are all happening. For most people, they're all happening at that moment of impact, right? And those are the most difficult things to change. Charles says, why do I take a step back? To be honest with you, I don't know. I would need to see your swing to know for sure. I have no idea why you take a step back. Maybe because you're not shifting your weight. I don't know. But if you're pulling the ball 30 degrees to the left, that is from coming over the top and steep. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, unfortunately, there's no way for me to know why you're taking a step back without seeing your swing. That's what I would need to see it to really know. And even then, it would just I may not know either. A drill that you can do, if you imagine like this is a range basket. What you can do is you can kind of put your foot in the range basket, and then you have to keep your foot in the range basket, right? So that's a way to kind of keep your feet from moving. Because from what it sounds like, you're saying you're kind of going like this, I guess. I'm having a little bit of a hard time picturing exactly what you're doing, but that's what I'm picturing. What I'm picturing is you're going up the top, and then you're stepping back with your lead foot, and that's making you kind of open up, and that's making your club path go out to in a ton, and that's creating a pull. That's what would make sense to me. So what I would do, you can do a drill where you do something to kind of keep your feet there. You could put a water bottle behind your foot, and you got to keep from knocking down the water bottle, right? So if I use my cup here, right? Imagine this is a water bottle, right? I have to hit balls without hitting that, without knocking it over. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.